Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sacker. The designer catwalk and the glossy magazine cover are powerful cultural signifiers. The top models who occupy those spaces are deemed to have a look that attracts and sells. But how diverse is that look? How inclusive? Well, my guest today has challenged a host of stereotypes that come with the label supermodel. Halima Aden is a refugee from Somalia's civil war. She's Muslim and follows a modest dress code. Hers has been an extraordinary journey to international fame and fortune. How has it changed her? Halima Aden, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you, Stephen.
Your life has undergone the most extraordinary transformation in recent years. Do you still feel the strangeness of it all, or are you becoming used to it?
I don't think you could really ever get used to fashion. It's a different world and so different to the world that I come from. So I'm still adjusting, and every day it's something new.
It's very important to go back to the beginnings of this story. You came to America with your mother when you were just 7 years old. Do you have much of a recollection of what life was like in that refugee camp in northern Kenya?
So Kakuma, surprisingly, was a great childhood. You know, not only was it the largest refugee camp in the world, it was still a beautiful childhood, you know, despite having obstacles like malaria, not knowing, you know, where your food is going to come from. It is a refugee camp, so definitely not an ideal place to raise a family, but thank God I experienced it, because the community and the values that it instilled in me, I still carry with me today.
I think a lot of people will be very surprised at those words.
Really?
You almost make it sound like a very happy childhood, but it was surely it was riddled with insecurity and poverty.
Not knowing, like, it's funny now because it's ironic because I'm in fashion and constantly surrounded with clothes, when my childhood, like, we were scrapping to find shoes, you know, like one pair of a shirt like would last us for months, and it's just night and day to like where I come from. But you can't take away the fact that the community made it vibrant. You know, it's 66%, even today, that's still true. It's 66% women and children. So we're talking a very nurturing, protective environment, and they made up for it in love and support.
That sense of community obviously was taken away from you when you and your mom made that amazing journey. First, I think, to St. Louis, Missouri, and then a little later you moved to Minnesota. But you went to somewhere so completely different. You lost all your friends, that community you had. How did you cope?
It was hard because I recall the happiness, the joy. I was a vibrant kid. I had a lot of friends, even in the camp. Like, I was, you know, quite popular, and I spoke fluent Somali and Swahili, and I felt like a bright kid. And so to leave that world behind and come to Missouri, and not only the most impoverished community in St. Louis, very tough first year. Because that's a lot of adjustment. You know, when you're a child, you're not told what legal status is. I didn't even know that we were refugees or why my family left Somalia to be there. I just knew that that was my reality.
What is so striking about your story is that you, by the time you get to teenage, you are a pretty strong-willed kid. First of all, you make a big decision, I think quite early in your schooling in the States, to wear the headscarf to cover your hair. Now, talk me through that. Why did you do that?
So, my mom, right? I didn't grow up with my dad in my life, but she was the epitome of strength, beauty, everything that I wanted to be. And I wanted to mirror her, even as a young girl. You know, like, I think about it as, it's as simple as like when your kid puts on lipstick at like 6 because they see mom is wearing a lipstick to work. And so for me, I wanted to resemble her, and that was part of my identity. You know, I grew up seeing lots of women wearing a hijab, and it was just a natural like fit for me.
Because we'll talk a lot about your style and your commitment to keeping strong sense of where you're from, which includes still, of course, today, covering your hair, dressing, as many would say, modestly. That doesn't seem to fit obviously and naturally with your decision. By the time we get to your first year, freshman year in college, your decision to enter the Miss Minnesota.
I know!
What on earth possessed you?
Well, it's a great platform. And,
Platform for what, though? What was your aspiration?
For scholarship. $10,000, even if you don't win the competition, but you make it to the semifinalists, you can walk away with $10,000, $15,000 worth of scholarship.
I'm just imagining what your mother might have made of it.
Oh, Mom was like, wait, what?
Yeah, because this is, throughout your young life, there are themes. One of the themes is the degree to which you can navigate what you want to do in life and stay true to your community, your traditions, your mom and your family. So did your mom at any point, when she's maybe thinking of swimsuits and the traditional vision of a beauty contest, did she say, Halima, you should not do that?
Many times. And even with modeling, that was another hurdle because she doesn't come from this culture. So for her, she had a hard time when I said, okay, I want to enter modeling. She thought of it as, okay, but you could have been a teacher, you could have been a lawyer, you could have been a doctor, you could have done all these incredible things. And when, your path could have been so much better in her eyes. You almost have to throw it back at her. Like, you did a great job as a parent because you've instilled in me the confidence to pursue my passion, and I'm still not forgetting my roots, where I come from. I'm a UNICEF ambassador. I do so much with this platform, and it's changing how young women see themselves. I didn't grow up with representation.
Did you very deliberately then, when you went to the beauty pageant, did you deliberately think to yourself, I'm going to go and compete, but with the scarf on, with hijab, and I'm going to be different?
No, I've never really, for me, it was never really that. It was mostly, I think it's amazing if you can walk into whatever it is and be yourself, And that's exactly what I was. I wear the hijab. I've been wearing it for a very long time. It's part of who I am. And so when it was time to compete in the pageant, I didn't want to strip myself of my identity only to fit in, So it was important that I remain true to myself. And I'm just so grateful that the organization allowed me to still participate, walk away with such an incredible experience, and I still got to remain myself.
And the point about entering that contest was that you got spotted. You got spotted by one of the great fashionistas.
Steven, when I tell you my life went from 0 to 100, like 100 miles per hour right after the pageant, like it completely changed my life overnight.
I'm just about to say I can imagine, but actually I can't imagine because there you were in a small town in Minnesota, and within weeks you were on the New York catwalk.
And my first trip to New York, I've never even, traveled for vacation, so it's all these things happening. Rihanna's team reached out. That was the first campaign I've ever shot, was with her for Fenty Beauty. All these incredible things, walking for Yeezy, night and day to, St. Cloud, where it's like more of a jean town, college town, very laid back, very relaxed.
But the difficulty there is that you are entering a huge industry with vast amounts of money, and it is something of a machine, and it churns through beautiful young women and men who are part of the sales product. Did you feel at any point you were losing control?
This is why, I wish my mom could see, you should be so proud, because even though, despite I come from a small town, fashion is exciting, it's everything, right? But I still went into that meeting with my agency willing to walk away if it meant conforming, if it meant changing my values, changing who I was. And I made it very clear, and they accepted me for just as I was.
Did anybody,
4 hours.
Well, this is fascinating. Did anybody ever say to you, Halima, you've got something, you're incredible, but you can do so much more, for example, if you're prepared to model without the headscarf?
No, that was never even a question. That was never even a question. But 4-hour meeting to talk about wardrobe. How is this going to work? Because, I'm the first hijab wearing model. It's never happened in the industry. And so with that, it's not as simple as just put her on the runway. Well, what happens backstage? I need to have a private dressing space to change it.
Because we know that for most models, most environments, it's very open. And most models
are very comfortable actually,
with exposing quite a lot of flesh. And then it's a pretty relaxed atmosphere backstage. I'm guessing that when you emphasize modesty as being important to you, your approach is somewhat different.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So I always travel with a female companion, whether that be my manager or publicist, my assistant, since the beginning, and it's so amazing. So the people who were the pageant organizers, they ended up managing me. So it's been like a smooth relationship from day one. It's two women that have traveled the world with me and are still in my life. And I've never ever gone on a trip, shoot, you name it. I've never done it without them by my side. They're the ones who changed me backstage. They're the ones who are constantly with me. And that was intentional, because it's a lonely world because, you're by yourself, traveling by yourself. I can't even imagine how some of these girls are doing it. So, but it also is a protection for me because I have somebody who is with me, a female companion at all times.
I read somewhere that in one of your first photo shoots, you were very taken aback when a photographer who was just doing what photographers do said to you as you were doing your first shoot, he said, "Hey, give me sexy."
I was like, if you know my personality, I was like, I don't think I have a single sexy bone in my body. Like, it's going to look very awkward.
Again, I'm thinking of your family back home in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and
yeah,
your
mom would have been like, what?
Yes. And your aunt came out with what I think is the most wonderful, withering comment at some point. She said, "You mean in America walking around in heels is actually considered a job?"
Yeah.
Because she's quite a conservative lady.
Yeah, because they want the traditional route, and I want to take the road less traveled. I think as an individual, be an individual, and it's okay to map out your life according to you.
I get what you've said to me about insisting on control and doing things your way. But let us be realistic. You are entering an industry which in some ways is highly sexualized, where women and young men can be objectified, and you are trying to navigate that with values that don't match. And are you sure you've been able to do it?
I have, because I haven't moved. Do you know the first meeting, 4 hours, Steve? All these incredible things. I didn't walk into that meeting saying, give me fashion. No, I'm going to do fashion. I want to do fashion, but it has to be on my own terms and my own way, and I was willing to walk away. And I think that's part of the reason why I've gotten the success I have and still remained true to myself. Like I said, I'm not moving to New York. I'm not moving to Milan. I'm not moving to a fashion capital. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to stay in Minnesota. And even today, I'm still in Minnesota.
Do you want in any way to be seen as the Muslim supermodel?
No, I don't even want to be seen as a supermodel. I just want to be seen as a girl who is not afraid to be the first, who is confident, who does not forget her roots. But I really don't care about those type of labels, if I'm being honest.
Do they annoy you? I'm just wondering if they annoy you, because inevitably...
No, it's flattering. It's really kind.
But it also opens up a discussion, and I'm wondering whether you've experienced it yourself, where I'm thinking on social media, you have a massive social media presence. Do you ever get Muslims who look at the world you have entered and who criticize you or abuse you or say, you know what, you as a sister, you should not be there?
You'll have those people, and I think sometimes, I think life is so short, and it sounds kind of cliche, but just focus on what brings you joy and go after those little things. And for me, it's now become this, this is my life now, and I'm happy and I'm not hurting anybody. In fact, I'm using my platform and trying to shine light on the beauty of like wearing modesty and all these things. My work with UNICEF, where I came from, the refugee crisis, all these things that has nothing to do with fashion and clothes and the runway. But it's not, I feel like I'm somebody who I wouldn't mind if my little sister, for example, followed me on Instagram, because I can say I'm proud of the content that I've been putting out.
There is a sense in which it's becoming more inclusive in terms of the public faces, that is, the models' faces, people like yourself. Do you, in your experience, find it becoming more inclusive and diverse in terms of the real power brokers, the people who run the industry?
Yeah, the behind the scenes, and honestly, can we be doing more? Absolutely. Every single day. I think there's so much that we could still improve on, but you also kind of have to step back and say, we're at a good place now in fashion. Like, I'm so proud that I'm joining the industry today, because I'm seeing models like Mae Musk, who's 72 years old, killing it on the runway, on the magazine covers, and it shows like beauty doesn't go away after a certain age, you know, because for men, you guys are lucky. It's like salt and pepper, like that is attractive as you age. It's like you age like fine wine. But for women, as you can probably know, that isn't the same, you know? So I'm glad like we have women like May and all these incredible older women who are the face of fashion, who are models. Winnie Harlow, Ashley Graham with body positivity. So many faces out there that are sparking the conversation. Behind the scenes,
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
so
what
sure.
I'm really interested in. The power brokers, the people making the decisions, who are running the magazines, organizing the photo shoots, running the agencies, these people.
Yeah.
Do you see the same level of diversity there?
I do. I really do. I think of Michelle Lee, who's an Asian woman who is the editor-in-chief of Allure magazine, Edward Enningfell, who is head of British Vogue, all these incredible people who are also on the forefront of making that change, creating the conversation, but also behind the scenes. And, you know, so I'm grateful that we have those people.
And what about social media? You have a huge following on Instagram. You clearly have a look that many people, young people around the world, would like to emulate. But there is a real concern that young people, in this seeking out of perfection, trying to change themselves to match the models that they see on Instagram, they're actually getting themselves into a very difficult place mentally.
I think we have the responsibility to inform the public that these magazine covers that you're seeing, you know, it took us 14 hours to shoot. You know, it's a lot goes into the behind the scenes.
It's peddling a form of fantasy in a way.
Yeah, but I didn't even know this. Like before I joined the industry, I used to just walk and like, oh, this is amazing, this is so beautiful. But I never put into, like, it never crossed my mind the hours, the production. You have so many people running around doing their job, working hard, 14-hour days sometimes. And it's not as simple as, boom, we got the shot, everybody can go home, you know?
But I'm just wondering, you're a 22-year-old young woman, and I'm just wondering what you would say to the many other young people who feel that they don't look good enough. And I'm just thinking of the words I read from a leading UK cosmetic doctor who said recently there's a hugely prevalent trend with young girls in particular asking for bigger lips and contoured cheeks and all sorts of other things in a bid to emulate what they see through filters on Instagram and other sites like that.
That's funny that you, like it's funny that you brought that up because when I was younger, I never used to smile with my full lips. I used to be like, you know, because I got made fun of for having fuller lips. So it's funny how years later, people are running like there's so many challenges trying to achieve fuller lips. And I was like, what happened? Because like when I was younger, that wasn't the standard of beauty. It's now becoming a trend, you know? So you almost have to look at these things and call it out for what it is. It's man-made, you know? The standard of beauty should be yours to define for yourself. And you should never compare yourself to anybody, you know?
Let me talk about modesty, because it's a word I've used throughout this interview, but you've become very specific about certain items of clothing that you're committed to. For example, I'm thinking of what, you know, has become known as the burkini.
Yeah.
You were invited to be part of, you know, the famous Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition.
I never thought I'd see the day.
I bet your mother didn't either. But there you were as part of the swimsuit edition, but you were modeling a burkini.
Oh.
Again, some would say that even by being part of that swimsuit edition, you're part of something that is damaging to women. Because it's a form of male gaze objectification.
Okay, I'm gonna have to disagree with that, only because it's empowerment. You know, first we were talking earlier about behind the scenes. MJ Day, a woman who is sparking the conversation. It's so much beyond than just girls on a beach taking photos. You know, it's led by a woman, for women, and the models, I can tell you, they're women who are entrepreneurs. Like Tyra Banks just got back the year that I shot, and she was one of the cover girls. And she is a woman, an example, Chrissy Teigen, Ashley Graham. This magazine sparked an entire career for them
But they're wearing different swimsuits from yours. I'm just wondering whether you see frankly, a market opportunity here to reach out to women who want to look good, but want also that element, as we've discussed, modesty. And I know that you've started working with retailers on particular sort of hair covers and turbans and scarves.
Yeah.
Is that something you think women, far beyond sort of, the cultural tradition that goes with Islam and parts of the world where you come from, it could reach a much wider audience?
100%, only because modesty, and I've said this since day one, modesty is not for one culture, it's not for one group of women. Modesty is the oldest, it's a fashion staple. It's been around since the beginning of time. It's going to be around for another 100 years. It's an option, just another option for people to participate in. And I'm not saying it needs to be a hijab and a turban and it needs to look like me for it to be considered modesty. In fact, like beauty, I think you define it for yourself.
And your message to those, for example, in France, the municipalities and the politicians who railed against bikinis on the beach and said it contravenes French values, French culture, French secularism.
And I think that's so sad. If a woman wearing a swimsuit threatens French values that much because of an article of clothing, what does that say about the values to begin with? And I think it's also unfair that it's women dealing with these things, women being arrested from public pools, beaches for wearing a burkini, another form of swimsuit. I have such a hard time.
I want to end, as I promised I would, by talking a little bit about your return. That you were invited back. You've become a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, and you were invited back to the camp you came from in northern Kenya.
Yeah.
What did it feel like?
It was a whirlwind of emotions. Like I went through all the stages with that trip. Because I went back at 21, I think I was 21, right? Yeah. And it was my first time coming home. And I was 7 years old the last time I was there, running around and all these amazing memories, but like a different lens to come back as an adult and see, wow, like it's horrific. And it's grown so much. It's almost doubled in size since my family left. And in fact, there were people still in the camp when I got back. And that broke my heart because I'm like, how is it possible that in this day and age, there's still refugee camps? But then it was so beautiful because UNHCR and UNICEF, I was so proud because the work has been done.
Well, your mum once said to you, why don't you become a doctor? Because then you can work with agencies like UNICEF and help the people that came from...
Wink, see, Mom? It all comes back. It all comes full
but the thing is, you are now an internationally famous model. Really, genuinely, do you think in your life you can make a difference to the people who live in Kakuma camp?
I think so, and it's coming from a selfish place when I say I wish I had somebody who's walked in my shoes, who could come back to the camp, look me in the face and say, this is what hope is, and it's okay to dream and have a life, and you deserve that outside of the camp, outside of these four walls. You deserve to dream big and prosper. And I hope that one day we get to a place where organizations like UNICEF are not needed because every child has exactly what they deserve, And it also, it just breaks my heart when I think of some of these numbers where it gets me so emotional, but I see the hope, and I think more success stories like my own, they're out there, they're out there because refugees are resilient people. They're strong-minded people. They're people who have so much to give, so much love to give. When I went back, the kids were singing and dancing and happy. And earlier you asked me, how is it possible to still have a happy childhood, despite it being a refugee camp? And I realized these people, yes, they don't have access to many of the things that we probably take for granted every single day, but they have something so beautiful in their spirit that no one can take away from them. No government, no nothing. And that is a gift that is a gift.
Halima Aden, it's a beautiful thought to end on. Thank you so much for being on